Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's event, Transforming Education Through Effective Instruction of Difficult Topics. This is the 7th presentation in our Noontime Knowledge Series for Penn State volunteers. We've got an exciting program ahead of us and lots to cover. I'm Gene Chaikin, a proud 1962 graduate with a degree in Business Administration. I'm also a former member of the Board of Trustees and emeritus member of the College of Liberal Arts Development Council. For many years, Penn State has been an important part of my life. There have been 4 generations of Penn Staters in the Chaikin family. My father, my brother, and I all attended the university. My son did as well. Now 2 of my grandsons have followed suit. Beyond it being a family affair, I've kept my personal connection with Penn State through volunteerism and philanthropy. And one of those proudest accomplishments is having been able to support over 100 students per year with half scholarships through our trustee scholarships in the College of Liberal Arts. Much of my other support for the college has gone to the Department of Jewish Studies. My wife Roz and I joined together, my brother Sheldon and his wife Gail, to endow the Chaikin Family Chair in Jewish Studies. Roz and I have also established an endowment in the department for the study of the Holocaust. Roz and I continue to support the department's efforts and we're advocates for these initiatives, especially around Holocaust education. In addition, my wife Roz and I have endowed the ADL with funds to teach the teachers about the Holocaust. We believe it's essential for young people to learn the causes and consequences of group-based hatred to avoid future genocides and threats to human rights. Today, just over 2 weeks before the International Holocaust Remembrance Day, on January 27th, we'll hear more about a project that's advancing this work and making Penn State a leader in Holocaust genocide and human rights education. Before I introduce our speaker, I'd like to provide a few logistical reminders about this event. This session is being recorded and will be shared with those who couldn't be here live this afternoon. Your microphones are currently muted, but we encourage you to turn on your cameras so you have a chance to see each other. This is also closed caption available for today's event, and you can turn the closed captioning on or off by clicking closed caption in the control bar. Following the presentation, we have a question and answer session. To participate in that, you can submit questions at any time during the event by using the chat box. We're also recording this presentation to post on the volunteer website. With that, it's my honor to introduce you today to today's presenter, Boaz Devere. Boaz is an award-winning filmmaker and assistant professor of journalism in Penn State's Donald B. Baldassaro College of Communications. Through his work, he tells the stories of ordinary people under extraordinary circumstances, blazing trails and changing the world around them. His films have been widely distributed by PBS, Hulu, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Google Play, and other national and international media outlets, and his works have been celebrated in equal measure. In 2016, his film, A Wing and a Prayer, was named Best Documentary at the Fort Lauderdale International Films Festival. It tells the story of a World War II flight engineer who becomes a leader of a secret operation to prevent a second Holocaust. Boaz's new book, Saving Israel, was released this year and is already being celebrated in national reviews. Saving Israel follows the journey of a World War II aviators who risked their lives and freedom to prevent another genocide. At Penn State, is the founding director of the Holocaust Genocide and Human Rights Education Initiative, a project he'll share plenty more about today. In his role, he works with the Pennsylvania Department of Education, units across Penn Station, and organizations like the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum to lead a teacher development initiative that seeks to upgrade instruction on difficult subjects for young learners. Before turning things over to Boaz, I'd like first to introduce Elliot Weinstein, who will moderate our question and answer session following the main presentation. Elliot is a former member of the Board of Trustees and a past chairman of Penn State Hillel. He earned his bachelor's degree in marketing from Penn State in 1973 and a master's in accounting, also from Penn State in 1974. For nearly 4 decades, Elliot has been president of Weinstein Realty Consultants. He is also a trustee for the Jewish Federation of North America and serves the American Israeli Public Affairs Committee's National Council, as well as the Israeli Bond National Advisory Council. Elliot works closely with Boaz on the Holocaust Genocide and Human Rights Education Initiative, and we're happy to have him here join us today. Now I'll turn the stage over to the leader of this important and impactful project, Boaz Devere.
We need to be more competitive. We need to prepare our students for a different world, a world that's changing in front of our eyes and will only continue to change. That change, neither the rate nor the level of change, is not going to stop. It's only going to continue and probably accelerate. So we need to change our educational system to meet the new needs. This initiative has a chance to contribute to that disruption, to that transformation. And you might say, well, I mean, that sounds a little lofty, doesn't it? I mean, we're talking about subjects that simply need to be taught, but how do they transform education? And that's what we're going to talk about today. See, a lot of students go to school not knowing exactly why they're there and not sure what the education means to them, really, you know, in the short run and possibly even in the long run. I know that I was one of those students who wasn't sure what I was doing in school. And if you take these difficult topics, as we are doing, if you take them and you teach them in an effective way, which is not being done today, if you do that, then you're able to infuse the educational system with meaning. Suddenly students know why they're there. Suddenly students understand that they can make a difference, that they can stand up to what's right, whatever that might be, whether it's bullying or climate change, that they can think for themselves, that they can become critical thinkers. We're going to give them we're not going to tell them what to think. We want to give them the tools to be able to think independently. And that means paying attention to other people. You see, to think critically and to be independent-minded actually means also listening to others, understanding others' perspectives, gaining empathy, getting along with people, appreciating that others have different points of view and that you can learn from them. And if you understand that as a young kid, then several things happen to you. Number one, your life is immediately better. Number two, as I said, your education suddenly means something. You get along better with people, your social life improves, your education improves, and your prospects long-term obviously improve substantially. Because if you get along with people, whether it's in the workplace or in school or at a youth group or church or wherever it might be, you're going to do better. That's just a fact. That's scientifically proven. So this initiative is first and foremost about providing children with life skills, skills that are transformative. And we utilize the difficult topics that now, as I'll describe in more detail in a minute, that now are really kind of shelved, bringing them to the forefront and utilizing them, not just to get through certain, points that you need to on the curriculum, got to make sure they know about this, check that off, or even to get through what's happening today, because you got to make sense of what's happening today. It's so confusing. It's confusing to us adults. Can you imagine how kids feel about COVID and DC and the elections? It's not just that. It's more than that. It really can provide children with empowerment. You see, children are lacking empowerment in our society, right? They don't get to decide a lot, they can't vote, they can't drive. I mean, think about it, those very little kids can do. This is one way to empower them, to show them, you know what? You may not be able to drive yet, you may not be able to vote yet, but you can make a difference right here, right now, today, for the group of kids around you, for your community. That can blow a kid's mind. So we have these difficult topics, right? And they include, of course, the Holocaust, and they include genocide. They also include slavery and bigotry and women's rights and human rights and on and on and on, and trauma. All these topics. What's happening with them today in schools? Very little, very little. Why? Because teachers lack the means to teach these topics. They often don't have the knowledge. That's true. Sometimes teachers just don't have enough knowledge, but that's the lesser problem. The bigger problem is that even if they have the knowledge, the content knowledge, they know about, let's say, slavery, they know what happened, they can talk about it. They lack the pedagogy, they lack the teaching tools to be effective with these topics in the classrooms. You see, with kids, it's very tricky, right? Because it's first of all, of course, whatever age they're at determines how and what you teach them. That's kind of obvious, but difficult to implement. Maybe simple in concept, but how do you really measure it and pinpoint it and make it happen? So that's one, but then it gets more complicated because on top of the grade level and the age, you also have subject matter, difficulty level, and what needs to be accomplished in a given school year. Because teachers face a lot of pressure these days. They have to make sure that the kids meet certain, grading objectives, testing objectives. There are district standards and state standards to be met. And all of these are overwhelming. They're just overwhelming. So even if a teacher is excited to, let's say, teach the Holocaust, let's say a teacher says, yeah, I really want to teach the Holocaust. I believe it's important. I believe my kids need to know about it. Her ability to do it well is limited by both the lack of support, lack of pedagogy, lack of teaching tools, and a disconnect with what she needs to accomplish in that particular year. And that's where we step in. This is where we are introducing a new element, because there have been great programs around Holocaust education, and there still are for many decades around the country. And I'm talking about Holocaust now as an example. As I said, we care about each and every one of these topics equally. There have been great programs. I mean, I don't want to name them necessarily because of what I'm about to say, but I will say that they are truly great by great organizations, and that several of them happen to now be our partners. But if they've been so great, why is it then that 4 out of 10 young Americans don't know what the Holocaust is? 7 out of 10 don't know what Auschwitz is. And there is the bigger question, right, that we can ask ourselves. If we've been saying never again now for 70 years, if we've invested billions of dollars into Holocaust education, if we've said, we got to make sure that we learn from the past so it doesn't repeat itself, then how come has it repeated itself over and over and over again all over the world in these 70 years? How come we've had Cambodia and Rwanda and Syria, and I can go on and on and on and on? Because something's missing. Something is missing. There's great content there. There's great intention there. But there's a disconnect, and that disconnect is with children. You see, if we can teach children at a young age to open their eyes, to develop empathy, to gain not just knowledge. Yeah, knowledge is important, but even more so, insight, perspective, and skills, life skills, then we can start to achieve that big promise of never again, right? And so this is the opportunity that we have here today. Why this has not been done elsewhere, I have no idea. I'm puzzled also as to why. But I can tell you this, it's probably something that's happening in other industries. What you have here is great research and great knowledge around these topics. Here at Penn State, for instance, in the College of Education, we have a whole department, and I mean a big, deep, smart, accomplished department of professors and graduate students who specialize in the science of training teachers. There's a whole science to it, much like there's probably a science to training pilots, let's say, or scientists. There's a whole set, right, of research and studies and practices around training teachers, but it's tucked away. It's exchanged among and between scholars. It doesn't reach down to the level of making a difference for children. It often never gets to the teachers. The Holocaust programs, for instance, that do a great job of providing content, often are not even aware that there's such a thing as a science of teacher development. They believe that they can come and give great content to the teachers, because they often do take, and the teachers will get excited, and many of them often do, and they'll get emotional, and many of them often do, and they'll say, I have got to take this into the classroom, and they go with that intent. But if they lack the teaching tools and the pedagogy, they either are gonna not do it enough, run into a wall of having to meet other priorities and not being able to do it, or teach it ineffectively. I'll give you an example. The Department of Education told me the story. They had a teacher who was a graduate of, again, I don't want to name any organizations because I think these organizations are fabulous. So I don't want it to sound critical. So this teacher was a graduate of a big organization, a big national organization. They had a special program for Holocaust teachers. Then she went through the Pennsylvania Department of Education's training as well. She was a star teacher, and she was very, very keen on making sure that her 10th grade, it wasn't 10th graders, they were 10 or 11. So what is that, fifth or sixth grade, fifth grade? That they knew about the Holocaust. She was, I think she might've been an elementary school teacher. And she really wanted them to know about the Holocaust. Maybe they were 11 or 12. So what would that be? Sixth graders. Yeah, they were sixth graders. And she invited the Department of Education and some members of these other organizations to come to her classroom to see her teach this after having been trained on it for a long time. And she thought it was a good idea to put her students, these kids, in the shoes of the victims of the Holocaust, the Jews in Europe who suffered through this atrocity. So she said to them, imagine if tonight, in the middle of the night, you hear banging on your door, and you go and you open the door, you and your family, and there are, a SWAT team dressed in black there, pointing machine guns at you, wanting to take you away. And one of the 12-year-old boys pops up and says, I'd grab my daddy's shotgun and I'd blow him away. And that sounds cute, but it's not good pedagogy. This is not how you teach the Holocaust. This is not how you use it to transform lives. This is where you hit a wall. One thing you need to understand in education is you cannot put kids in the shoes of these victims. Number one, it's impossible. We can't today really imagine even what they went through. We cannot put ourselves in their shoes. It's impossible. And second, even if it was possible, why would you want to do that to your kids? You would traumatize them for the rest of their lives. So, there's a much more sophisticated way of doing this. But a lot of the trainers and a lot of teachers just don't know about it. So we are that bridge. We are that bridge connecting the latest research, the best practices in the science of teacher development here at Penn State, and through our professors here, we have great knowledge and connection to the same kind of research that's happening all across the country, because we're not the only university that does this. So we tap into the very latest in what's known as professional development, and we bring it to the teachers. And we work with these partners who have great content, and we bridge it together, giving it the glue, that connection that makes that great content come to life in the classroom in the way it has not come to life yet, because it's been missing this ingredient, this key ingredient. And so in order to reach the children, we are focusing on the teachers. Besides the long name that we have, Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Education Initiative, you'll also come across that we're the Teach the Teachers Initiative. And we do it through professional development. We work with the Department of Education to provide professional development to these teachers. Teachers here in this state have to recertify every 5 years. And to do so, they need 180 credits, professional development points. They get 1 point for every hour spent. And the most that they can earn in 1 year is 60. And we offer 60. We offer 60 in our program. So teachers who participate in our program earn the full 60 for that year. But here's the difference. And this is mind-boggling too, why no one has done this before, why we're the first to do it, although the Department of Education is telling me they want to adopt this elsewhere. So up until now in this state, and I believe elsewhere, but I can tell you for a fact in this state, where we have done professional development now for decades, here's the way it's always done. It's always done the same way. A teacher goes to a facility, it might be online now, but it's the same idea. And they sit there and they take in the information that's given to them. and then they go home. And that's it. There's no accountability. There's no follow-up. There's no support. There's no implementation phase. There's none of that. A teacher comes, they sit, they listen, they leave. Now, often the professional development in itself is not very relevant. It's often given by for-profit companies from out of the state about a variety of topics, and often teachers just sign up for what they can. But even when it is relevant, it doesn't often translate into making a difference for kids, which is what it should be about. So we've flipped that whole model on its head. Our training is not about seminars. It's not about sitting and listening. It's only about implementation. In our training, there is nothing but implementation. So when a teacher applies even to our program, they must demonstrate immediately in their application what they intend to do with the training, how they plan to implement that in the classroom. And then once they come on board, we put like-minded teachers together in cohorts. And those cohorts together have a team leader, and they work together during the seminar, the intensive seminar that we have, to develop action plans on a daily basis and customize even their own learning along the way so that they walk away ready to do something back home. Then we follow up with them. We have webinars, team leader meetings, cohort meetings, expert meetings, school visits, you name it, through the year. And we were able to convince the Department of Education to do something that they've never done before. And that is to allow anyone, in this case it's us, to award professional development points for the implementation phase. So when we give teachers 60 points, we give them 30 for the seminar. And mind you, even the seminar is not 30 passive hours of sitting and listening. Even then it's mixed between knowledge reception and proactive creation of an action plan to be implemented by that teacher. So those are the first half of the 60 points. The second half are given during the school year for the implementation phase. And on top of that, we are studying it. We want to study the efficacy of it. Why? Well, for many reasons. I'll name a couple. One, we want to see what we're doing and how we can improve. If we don't measure it, how do we know? This is our first training. I know I can tell you right now, as much as we're optimistic and excited about it, as much as we're putting a lot into it, and we have some great partners doing it with us, like the Anti-Defamation League, which is fabulous. I can tell you right now for a fact, we can do better. I know that already, right? The second time, we better do better. So we want to measure it. We want to see how and where. That's one. Number two, another reason why we're doing it. And we put together 3 IRBs. These are very intensive applications that you have to really, I mean, I don't want to say kill yourself, but almost. I mean, they're very tough applications that you have to go through, not just initially in what you submit, but the follow-ups that they give you. We have put in 3 for 3 different kinds of studies already, and we'll do many more. The second reason we want to study, and again, 2 out of many reasons, is because it will allow us to share these kinds of models that we're creating elsewhere. We're Penn State. We're a nonprofit organization. We want to make the world a better place. If someone in Kansas wants to take this model and do it in Kansas, God bless them. We're happy to give it away. We want them to do it. So by studying it, it allows our team to do such things as present in conferences, publish, have discussions, webinars, etc., and disseminate the knowledge. And in disseminating this knowledge, we make it an open source program. I'm sure you know the term, right? Between, a kind of a self-contained development, some projects are, and then an open source project where you open it up to the world and invite people from all over to start giving us ideas. Doesn't mean we have to use all of them, but we want to hear ideas, needs, thoughts, new kinds of professional development that we might not have heard of. So our whole system is revolutionary. not just when it comes to Holocaust education, not just when it comes to difficult topics, but actually when it comes to the whole business of teacher development. So if we can revolutionize these three things, then we can contribute to the revolution of education, you know? And these difficult topics they're here, whether we like it or not. I mean, you know, we can't hide anymore from them. How can a teacher today go into a classroom and not address what's going on in the world today? Whether it's COVID or the elections or what happened, you know, last week in Congress. But how can she not address them? And at the same time, how could she possibly address them, right? It's quite a dichotomy. She has to address them, but how the heck is she going to do? I mean, it's so difficult for a teacher to do that. How do you facilitate that when you know that your kids come from so many different backgrounds and have been told so many different things at home? How do you facilitate a healthy conversation around it? How do you facilitate a conversation that's not only healthy, but serves as a model for discourse, so we know how to conduct democracy moving forward? Because that's the time to do it. Because if we show our kids how to do that, if we show them, yes, you can disagree, but still carry on a very healthy, respectful discussion, boy, now you're talking about transforming not just education, but our whole society, right? But here's what's sad. These facilitation tools exist. It's not that they don't exist. There's great research about it. There are great studies about it. There are great protocols. The sad element is that it's not being used in classrooms. You only find it in academic journals. So we are here to fix that. I'm looking at my time because I can talk for a long time. I think I have a few more minutes. So I'll use them up, but I won't go too long. So these facilitating tools can really make a big difference. All we have to do is connect it. We are not here to reinvent the wheel. We do not want to recreate any sort of new media, for instance, necessarily. Certainly not around the Holocaust. There is great material around the Holocaust. I do not foresee us having to create anything new. We may have to create some for these other topics because they're not as well developed. You know, some other genocides, some human rights issues. You know, the Department of Education told us something interesting. They said, if you think Holocaust is suffering as a topic, take a look at slavery. Slavery, which anyone can make the argument, if you had to, teach one or the other, if there was no choice. And I think there is a choice and you can teach both in the school system. But in the American school system, if you only had a choice to teach either this or the other, you got to teach slavery. How do you not teach slavery? It's part of America. It's a very important part of America. It's still, you know, its effects are still with us today, all over the country. And yet it's a subject that receives even less attention than the Holocaust. So yes, we may have to develop some media, but for the most part, the media is there. The research is there. Our job is to take it and bring it all together. We're a one-stop shop for the Department of Education. We're really a one-stop shop, possibly even for the whole nation, in terms of providing teachers with the tools they need so they can step into the classroom and elevate everything in it and connect it to today. We are not just working with social studies teachers and English teachers, we are working with teachers of all subjects. Because you can use any of these topics in any subject. I'll give you an example. I was invited to share Kojo, my film and some work I did. This is just as the initiative was getting going, so we didn't have lesson plans yet. But I was invited to share this at a Catholic school outside of Philly in their language program. French and mainly French. And I asked why. I mean, you're teaching French. And they said, because if we can take a story like this, instead of, you know, just teaching vocabulary and use it, then we create greater engagement and the students learn French better. Yes, they learn some other things. They learn about the Holocaust, they learn about humanity, they learn about identity and the search for meaning. So yes, there are other elements that we bring into it, but we still achieve our goals of teaching them French. In fact, we do it better because the greater engagement you create, the more learning that happens. And that's what we're all about. So again, there's a lot more I can say, and I'd love to take questions and hear your thoughts. I will close before I hand it over to Elliot. I will close with this. We can't do any of this without you. We need you. We need the whole Penn State nation to step up and help us with it. So if you know someone who may be interested in this, please, we'd love to talk to them about it. Whether it's programmatically or in development or whatever it might be. We need you, and together we can contribute to revolutionizing the educational system, emboldening our young people, emboldening our democracy, and transforming our society. And now I'll hand it over to my partner, Elliot, who's been with us from day one. We would not be here without him. He has been a key member of our team. Thank you for all you do, Elliot. The floor is yours.
Great. So let me just first thank all of you for attending. We have 155 people I see here. So thank you, Gene, for your excellent introduction. Thank you, Ted, for the support of the Penn State Board of Trustees. And especially thank you, Boaz, for leading this Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Education Initiative that together, just a couple of years ago, we planted the seed when I was a Penn State trustee. We recognize that this initiative is on the cusp of being an educational model to lead our entire Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and equally important, potentially, our nation. Let me tell you a little bit about the why, what, and how of my involvement. We all recognize, obviously here, the importance of Holocaust education. As we said, there is great curriculum from a multitude of institutions. But in the back of my mind, I always felt when we put this together that there was a gap in the curriculum to reaching out and actually connecting with the K through 12 students. Penn State, as a trustee, I recognize has the bandwidth to reach our Pennsylvania 501 public school districts under Pennsylvania's Act 70, passed in 2014, as Penn State is the only Pennsylvania educational institution with such a broad capability. So just recently, in the past few months, in mid-2020, our US Congress, based on initiatives of very major volunteer organizations, including Hadassah, Christians United for Israel, and Jewish Federations of North America all joined together working and helped to ratify into law the Never Again Education Act. While this Penn State initiative parallel and represents a synergy of our state legislature, our state Department of Education, and a state major university, obviously Penn State, which is a model deemed by these leading organizations to implement the Never Again Education Act, which is now national law. We are deemed to be unique by these organizations. It's incredible. So I am very proud to lead this initiative's development committee. Our task is to assure that significant funding can be secured for growing this initiative. Through all of our networks, on this Zoom, all of us, all 155 people, we all have the opportunity for what we say in Hebrew is known as tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is universal for everybody, of every people. And it's a universal responsibility to repair a broken world. We all know this world is a bit broken. I welcome talking to each and every one of you, one-on-one, how you too can be in a position of leadership in this very, very important initiative. So now, in the next few minutes that we have remaining, I would like to review with those assisting me on the chat room to have Boaz, Gene, or myself, or Ted, answer any of your questions with a cutoff at 1 p.m. promptly. If you have any other questions that we cannot answer, every question will definitely, absolutely be answered by any one of us in the next 24 hours. So I have a couple of key questions, but I have one that came in from the chat room. So let me just start with that. And Boaz, probably the best way to answer it. But I see that there is a comment that the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum provides excellent resources for teachers. Buzz, can you talk about how you're partnered, how we, Penn State, is partnering with the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum?
Yeah, the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum is one of our partners, and they do a great job, obviously. And we partner in several ways, and our partnership is only going to, I think, deepen and grow in coming months and years. But here's just one example. I mentioned earlier that we have team leaders. So our participating teachers come in to our training. It's a year-long program. They'll put in cohorts of like-minded teachers, and they're assigned a team leader. Those team leaders are mostly, not all, but mostly U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum teaching fellows. They have graduated from the Memorial Museum's program. So that's one way. Now, you may say, why would the museum get excited about working with us? If they're already doing the same thing, aren't they competing? Because they understand that we provide a bridge that doesn't exist. They understand that on several levels. One is our introduction of the science of teacher development into this realm. It's been missing from it. There's great content, but great content is just not enough. In fact, it can be even a double-edged sword sometimes, right? A teacher can go, let's say to the museum and be very excited about what she learns there. And they get so much great stuff, so much great material, that these teachers can be overwhelmed when they get back, and they're not sure how to thread that needle, how to bring it into the reality of their lives. That's where we come in. We serve as their conduit. We come in and help them figure out, okay, you're teaching 10th grade English this year. Great. Let's look at your objective. Number one, what state standards are you trying to meet? Right? Number one. You know what? We can help you meet those state standards. We have the knowledge to figure out how the content that you were given, wherever it might be, from us or from elsewhere, again, we're partnering with us, so it becomes one and the same, how it not becomes one more thing to do, but in a sense, it contributes to one less thing you have to do, because now you don't have to worry about this state standard. We can take care of that for you. That in itself is huge, right? That in itself makes all the difference in the world. And then we provide ongoing support along the way, and we study it. And part of our approach is not just for us to study it. I didn't get into it earlier because we start to get into the weeds, but we have this educational best practice known as inquiry, which allows the teachers to measure their own practice, to research their own wanderings. We provide them with the mechanism and the foundational ability to do that on their own. That greatly empowers the teachers. By the way, we then can also teach the teachers on how to get their children to conduct inquiry for themselves as well. So there's layers here that are simply missing because great big national organizations can't do that, don't know how to do it, don't have the resource to do it, don't have the mindset to do it. We come in, we bring that in. When we mention that to the museum, when I talk to them, I mean, they got very enthusiastic about teaming up with us, because they understand that no longer can they only reach the superstar teachers who really care about this and can somehow figure it out for themselves and know how to fit it in. Yeah, you have those teachers. That's some of our team leaders. But we can create a much, much bigger ripple effect that spreads out around the whole country. Number one. Number two, we deal with all difficult topics, right? And I think that's important. That's really important. I mean, the Holocaust is one difficult topic. It's a vital one, and we are committed to it, but it's not the only one. And there are others. For instance, right now, we believe, and we believe this because we're told this by teachers in the Department of Education, and we see studies about this, that the most difficult topic actually in schools is not the Holocaust or slavery or the election. It's trauma inflicted by such problems as COVID. And trauma is so widespread and so problematic, teachers are desperate to receive tools, teaching tools, coping tools to handle it. So we are working with the Department of Education on a multidisciplinary effort across our campus to build the state's first asynchronous online modules to train K-12 teachers and staff on coping with trauma. I didn't get to see everyone here. We have 150 people. But I did see Ilana, Elliot's daughter. Ilana is a school psychologist in Delaware County, and she's on our team. She's helping us. She's among several great people on our team who are helping us build this module. So you see where there's great needs out there that we're helping to fill. And we're stronger when we recognize that some needs are already met and we combine effort with them.
Sounds great. Great. Got lots of questions coming in. And here's another one. And of course, we talked about how this was based on our Pennsylvania Act 70. So the question was sort of relevant to that is which school districts in Pennsylvania or elsewhere are signing up for this training and program? And secondly, to that question was, how is that working on a pragmatic basis?
So we are open to all 67 counties and all 500 school districts in the state, and we welcome everyone. Our first training launches in April when we teach the team leaders, when we work with them, and then officially begins with the participants in June. When we put out the call for applications, we received 120. We're only able to take 20 at this point for various reasons, including funding. But we hope to grow that greatly. And I think our 3-year plan, Elliot.
Right, we know. I know.
Yeah, we have a 3-year plan. I think it calls for actually reaching all 500 school districts within 3 years, within 3 fiscal years, starting fiscal year, July 1st. But yes, within 3 years, we plan to reach all 500. Within 2 years, about half of that, and fairly soon, a good portion of it. I will say what's going to happen is a ripple effect. A lot of the teachers we're going to work with are teacher leaders who are going to take what they learn and spread it around and teach other teachers, as teachers are prone to do. We're going to empower them to do it. We're going to support them to do it. And so I believe that there will be a big ripple multiple effect to our training. Was there a second question? Did I miss?
Well, no, but let me give you another one because we're on a roll. So what are some examples of implementation techniques that you teach?
Well, I mean, there's so many, but as I mentioned, inquiry being one, where a teacher owns her own teaching and measures her own self. You see, teachers are so, and I'll give a couple of other examples really quick, but teachers are so used to being measured by others, right? It's oppressive. They are measured. Their students are measured. I know it's necessary. We don't need to get into whether or not, we don't take a position politics on that. We just deal with reality. The reality is that this is how it is, right? Lots and lots of measurements. What if we empower the teachers to measure themselves, right? To figure out for themselves how they're doing, to look at what's important to them. That also can flip the whole paradigm of this. Whereas before it was coming at them, now they can own it. So the inquiry model is very powerful. And there are several studies that show it can really radically alter the way teachers and students view education, what they get out of the education, their long-term success. It's just a very underutilized method. So that's one thing we bring. And then, I mean, if you start to break down the subjects, right? I mean, I can give you 100 examples along the way, but let's take one. Let's just take one very quick one, the Holocaust, okay? And let's just talk about one aspect of it. So when you're a child in school, you're under the impression, for the most part, that you can ask questions, that some questions may be smart, some are dumb, but you can ask questions, and that questions yield answers, right? And there's people to give you those answers. In teaching the Holocaust, one of the great lessons that we can learn today, all of us, and I think it's particularly powerful for kids, is that sometimes there are no answers. Sometimes there are no answers. Simple. Instead, what's important sometimes in life is to ask the questions, that the questions in themselves can be powerful and they can lead to other questions. And I believe just that, for a kid to realize that sometimes questions don't have answers, that sometimes adults don't know, that sometimes facts don't really tell you the full story. That can really change a kid. I think it can change adults too. So through the teaching of the Holocaust, we can show kids the power of questions and how they can question everything around them and not just accept things as they are. So if, God forbid, they hear racism at home, doesn't mean that they have to take it. They can question it for themselves. They can develop as critical thinkers. So again, I can give lots of examples. This is actually one of my favorite parts of talking about this. And I'd be glad to maybe do a session on it and get into it and bring some of my colleagues who can contribute. But hopefully these two examples are sufficient for this.
Great. Let me just go with another great question I'm seeing and coming across, and I could probably help you out a little bit with this one. And that is, does the Holocaust Museum have grant applications for money to fund your program? And before I get on, I would like to also add in that I talked about Hadassah and Christians United for Israel and Jewish Federation of North America. So our reach is huge. And I know Hadassah has a really strong desire to see this thing getting off the ground with its 300,000 members. CUFI has almost 10 million members. JFNA has dealing with. And collectively, this is such an initiative with us taking the lead as we pull in these other organizations. But maybe if you want to address, is there any direct funding? But I know that we're trying to grow this, which is part of what we're talking about. You want to add your 2 cents?
Yeah, Elliot, why don't you begin and then I'll pick up.
Well, it looks like that what we do, it is unlimited for what we're trying to do. We originally have this 3-year plan that we're looking to share with everybody. We had an anonymous gift. I'd like to thank the anonymous donor. We had $250,000 for an initial gift, and that helped to kick this thing off. But we really look like the potential, as it's not just in Pennsylvania's 501 school districts, but there's probably about 30,000 school districts in this country throughout our 50 states. We are the seed for doing this and putting this together. And with our growing partners of Hadassah and CUFI, Christians United for Israel, Jewish Federation of North America, which is taking an active lead on this, that together we're really working together to make this. So we're just in the beginning. We're just in the infancy for getting this off the ground. Largely, this information session is that. And the sky's the limit. And we can see the need is unlimited. You can't put a cap on this. Sometimes when we do fundraising, there's a specific goal, build a building, do this, do that. That's not the situation here. We're never going to have, how do you measure success? I'm not sure when we're going to measure success because it's ongoing, and success is not a destination, it's a journey. We want everybody and all 155 people to be on this journey with us.
Yeah, I don't know about the grants at the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum. I don't, and I second your, thanking the anonymous donor. Really saved us by giving us the $250,000. It's been huge, so thank you. If you're with us today, thank you so much. And if you're not, God bless you. But I do know that there's tons of money. For example, here in this state, tens of millions of taxpayers' dollars are spent every year to pay mostly for-profit companies out of this state to provide what is almost unanimously deemed as mostly, there are exceptions, as mostly mediocre, let's call it that, professional development. We have been working for 2 years to get a sliver of that for us. A nonprofit, Pennsylvania-based, highly effective professional development. So far, other than the anonymous donor, you'll be proud to know, our support has come from Penn State. Penn State has been amazing and has really backed us in every which way, including financially. So, the rest is there for us to try to get. But so far, I think it's up to us.
Good. And let me just finish up maybe with one last question. And maybe what we deal with, let's see, I'm just looking at, is each district a consulting engagement in which a tailored result is created? So is a special result that we're looking for from each district?
Every district is different, and we are aware of that. And so that's why, for instance, we create cohorts, because we know that different teachers come from different places and have different interests and different objectives. That is true. So we are cognizant of that. Mostly though, they all have to take professional development. They all have to meet state standards. They all have to deal with difficult topics, even if they don't want to. It's thrust upon them. So we give them the support and tools to do that. We do work individually with teachers and customize to their needs, which often do come from what district they're at, and sometimes even from what school. There's a big difference between a Title I school let's say, in an urban area, and some other school in a rural area. Similarities and differences, we are cognizant of them. And one of the ways we're cognizant of them is we talk and we ask questions and we listen to the teachers. You see, we're not just building this for teachers, we're building it with teachers. And so we have a council of teachers from across the state advising us, right? And we see every participant in our training as equal to us. We work together. It's not us teaching them. They teach us just as much. We work together. And that's the beauty of it. And that's the empowerment for them and the benefit to us and the rest of the program.
Good. Let me just with one other little short question, and then I'm going to turn it back to Gene, and we're done by 1 o'clock. So point blank, how much is needed to raise to sustain this journey from all of these sources and others to just get this ball on the road so that we're up and running?
I think to really get this going, we need $1 million right now. Elliot, that's what we talked about. We need a total of, we need to raise $1 million. With that $1 million, I think we can go to Hadassah, we can go to Kufi, we can go back to the Department of Education, say, look, private enterprise has put up $1 million. Now we need you to match it. And I think with those $2 million, we have a foundation that we not only use to implement a lot of these ideas quickly, but also to apply for other grants. You see, you need funding to apply for funding, right? You need money to make money. And that will allow us to apply for many, many grants that are out there in all sorts of ways.
Sounds great. So I'd like to give you a virtual round of applause because we really can't do that in the crowd. But on behalf of the 155 people who started out here, most are still on. Let me turn it over back to Gene to wrap it up. Gene?
Thank you again for joining us this afternoon. At the end of the session, you'll see a slide that includes a link to a webpage. You can make a gift to support the Holocaust, Genocide, and Human Rights Education Initiative. If you're feeling inspired by what you heard this afternoon, on that slide, you'll also find contact information. If you have any question to what you want to get involved with anything mentioned during today's presentation. By tomorrow, you'll each receive a survey about this event. I encourage you to complete the survey as your feedback will inform our future events, like our next Noontime Knowledge webinar on February 10th, when we welcome members of the Thon Education Executive Committee to hear more about funding and their fundraising advocacy efforts as they plan for a virtual Thon weekend this year. Hope you all continue to stay safe, connected to Penn State community. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Thank you again.